Hello and welcome. So in this video, I wanted to give you guys some information that was shared with me in the comments. If you're using the latest Alder Lake generation or newer CPUs, that's the Core Ultra 9 185H or similar, and you have the Intel Arc GPU, as I do here, then I want you to know that you can leverage this for streaming and gaming. So you'll have essentially two GPUs in your laptop, and if you stream and game on one laptop, you will be able to eliminate having another device, a need for a desktop, or a separate encoder to ensure that you get maximum performance from your main device that you use for gaming, while all of the streaming work and encoding work is offloaded to another GPU. These Arc GPUs are actually quite capable, and we need to utilize them more. And these CPUs are actually quite capable as well. So I'm going to demonstrate here on the ROG Zephyrus G16. There's a few little tricks here that you can switch up, and that will give you the ability to stream from your laptop and game on these laptops. These are fantastic machines, thin and light. They do have lots of power with the 4070 under the hood, and with that Intel Arc graphics, you can really leverage this thing to the max to get gaming and streaming workstation pretty much on the go wherever you have a good Wi-Fi signal. First things first, we'll head over to our control panel. We'll go over to display settings under system. As you scroll down, you click on graphics, and here you'll see that Windows allows you to pin particular applications to a particular GPU. Otherwise, by default, Windows will use whichever it feels is necessary for the workload that you're trying to accomplish. So in this case, we want the iGPU to be used for OBS, so we can offload a lot of that work of streaming and rendering and encoding those videos off to the Intel Arc GPU. So we'll add an application. If it isn't already in the list of apps here that are already preset, you can click on Browse. We'll head over to our C program files, OBS Studio, and this path may differ based on if you're running the 32 or the 64-bit. If you have these Core Ultra 9 185H or similar processors, you should be running the 64-bit version of OBS. Select the OBS 64 executable file, click Add, and from here we'll click on Options and ensure that you're selecting the power saving option here, which will pin this application to the Intel Arc graphics. Once you've done this, you'll see here that there's two additional options. There's also a high performance option. Now, the downsides of this is that with power saving, you won't be able to use, if you're gaming on the 4070 GPU, you won't be able to use game capture within OBS. You'll have to use display capture to capture your gameplay. That said, here there's also an option here for don't use optimizations for windowed games. Windows 11 has added lots of optimizations for windowed and borderless Windows games that seem to be preferable in many games today. So leave this option off and click Save. Now, what we'll do here is we'll quit OBS. I have it running right now to do this recording. We'll quit OBS. I'll start it back up. I'll show you what the difference is in the CPU and the GPU usage, and then we'll talk about some gameplay and do a short video demo to demonstrate that it doesn't have or exhibit those thermal throttling effects that I was seeing, where power levels would drop down because of very high GPU utilization, and you would get from 80 or 90 watts or so roughly on the 4070 and this Zephyrus G16 for 2024. Kick all the way down to 40 to 45 watts, and the game would become unplayable. The driver would crash depending on what game you're running in. I tested with Dragon Age the Veilguard and also with Star Wars Outlaws. So let's come back here with this setting applied, and we'll talk to you more in a moment. Alright, and we're back after pinning our OBS Studio to use the Arc GPU that's built into the Core Ultra 9 185H from Intel. That is the Alder Lake generation. Let's look at some other things here you can do to configure your OBS to make it a much more pleasant experience. We'll go into settings here. We'll unhide our OBS app. Apologize for the weird look there, but you should be able to see my settings screen. So here I want to demonstrate a couple of different things. In my case here, I'm using for the video settings 2560 by 1440. Despite the laptop display here being 16 by 10, which is 2560 by 1600, I find this is a nicer 16 by 9 aspect ratio for streaming or game recording. So I've changed the resolution there. The next main thing you want to change is if you go to Output, here you have a streaming tab and a recording tab. Ideally, you can adjust both of these settings here. By default, you'll be in simple mode. Make sure you toggle the output mode here and set it to advanced. I can't change many of these settings right now because I'm actually recording on this machine. So apologies, I'll have to try to demonstrate this here as best as I can. And what I've done here is the quick sync is the hardware encoder that is built into the Intel Arc GPUs that are on board these CPUs. So what that means, if you select any of these quick sync options here, you can select between H.264, H.265, NVENC, or AV1. Those are generally the various options. I've chosen AV1 here because it's a more modern format. It's more, it's streamlined more on file size, and it preserves the quality overall better. If you're streaming at 1440p 60 fps to YouTube recommends the highest bitrate you should be streaming at is 24 kilobytes per second, and I've got that set here with a CBR. I have not adjusted any of these options here, but because you're leveraging that GPU, you can actually push this all the way further to its lowest for best quality, and make sure you increase the keyframe interval to 2 seconds. That's all you need to do. Hit apply. If you're doing recording, similar settings here. Make sure your video encoder is set to quick sync, either AV1, H.64, or whichever you prefer. There's a few different options here that you'll get based on the ARC GPUs. That said, make sure you select CBR here. You can also, of course, select CQP or other options here for the rate controls. I like to capture or record in 50 kilobits per second. That gives me twice the bandwidth and bit rate of what YouTube requires for streaming. So if I need to record some content to make clips or other shorts or whatnot, this will give me a good enough quality that I can actually capture. Of course, the same here. I've set this to best quality so I get the best visual recording when I'm going to be doing the streaming. So if you set this here, you'll notice now, if we hop over to our control panel, so this is our Intel Arc graphics. This is the GPU that's built into the Core Ultra 9 185H, and we can see here that running at about 4 gigahertz here, we've got a few of these cores pinned at 100%, but we've still got lots of room here. Overall usage is about 43% on that CPU, and we've got this pinned almost at 85%, 88%. Recording this at about 50 kilobits per second. That's twice the stream rate of YouTube for 1440p 60 fps video. If we look over at our dedicated GPU, it's sitting idle and just chilling along. So that means we'll have lots of capacity here for gaming. So the next thing we'll do here is we'll pause this, we'll fire up Star Wars Outlaws, and that's one of the games that I demonstrated in another video that talks about performance issues and a long-term review of the Zephyrus G16. I'll leave a link for that on top of the video here. Please go and check that out so you understand the context and the background of why I'm making this video. And thanks very much to Papyakas for basically suggesting this as an option. I was very frustrated and struggling with why my laptop was not able to game and stream, considering I felt there was tremendous power with the GPU and CPU that I had in here. Alright, so here we are. This is Star Wars Outlaws. I'm going to pop up my on-screen display here. Let me turn down the volume just a bit so it's easier to talk over this. So let's fire up our game here. So you can see initially as we start out, this has been testing for a while, so it hasn't been actually from a cold state, this laptop, but what we're seeing here is after a few hours of testing, gameplays, various different configurations, so it's running a little bit hot. I'm running in turbo mode on the Armory Crate software. So I'll demonstrate that here, running in turbo mode at the native 1440p, well, close to native 1440p resolution of this display. I've got it set to that 16:9 mode so that it's a little bit easier and you can fill the whole screen when we stream or upload the content to YouTube here. So as you can see here, a nice lock 60. It's a very lush environment, lots of physics effects here. In some indoor environments where there's lighting or lots of running water, you will get those dips because the physics are just far more challenging for this laptop to maintain. But other than that, you should have a pretty good experience here. So here we are, and this isn't the focus of this video, so let me pop up here our task manager and we'll talk about what's happening on the CPU, GPU, and the dedicated GPU. So we can see here we're now getting much more fuller utilization of the CPU, 60 to 70%. In some cases, it looks like it pinned up to 100%, but in normal gameplay, you'll get about 60 to 70% usage in this game on this particular laptop with the Core Ultra 9 185H. iGPU, the Intel Arc integrated GPU on the CPU, is doing most of the heavy lifting in terms of processing the video, streaming and encoding it. And we see here that our NVIDIA GPU is being utilized about 60% or so, which means potentially we could push the graphical settings a little bit higher. But this is going to give us some very comfortable gameplay. And I tested this. I couldn't really believe that this was possible, so I tested it for a while before I made this video to say, hey guys, this is a neat little trick and it actually works very well. And considering how much more powerful these iGPUs have gotten within the same power envelope, as a CPU, why would you not take advantage of this? This can definitely up your game in terms of gaming and streaming from one singular system. If you're living the laptop life, this I think can be a huge lifesaver here. So let's talk about the performance and the power levels. As you can see here, we're getting about 35 to 40 watts roughly on that CPU, and about a consistent 80 watts, which is the base power without dynamic boost applied to that GPU. So at 80 watts on that 4070, we're gonna get some really nice and respectable frame rates here. We're at lock 60, we're very close to lock 60. Of course, the fact that this is an OLED display with very low response times means you're gonna have a heck of an experience gaming on this thing. I do not see frame tearing whatsoever, and I gotta tell you that it's just that much more enjoyable when you're not getting frame tearing or screen tearing or jitter or any of that stuff, the visual artifacts impacting that you would generally see from the game. Now, I've been in some heavy firefights in this game as well, playing at these settings. Let's show you what these settings are so you guys can believe what I'm saying here. So we're running at 1440p resolution. We've got DLSS turned on, of course, frame generation on, of course, and ray construction, which is ray tracing on, of course. And if we go here, so for DLSS, let me just point this out. We're running in balance mode. You know, it's basically a little bit of a trade-off, I guess, for getting the performance if you're gonna be turning on ray tracing and all the visual goodies. As you can see here, if I turn it to quality, we do get about a 10 to 15% drop. Now in the 50 to mid 50s range. Still very playable because the refresh rate and response times on these displays are excellent. OLEDs make a great gaming display. It's so visually stunning. The other thing is, if we look at the graphical settings here, we're setting on the Ultra preset. All of this stuff is set to whatever this preset defines under advanced graphics. The only other change here is to point out is that all of these ray tracing stuff are set to high. This could probably be set higher, but no reason to really exhaust and stress out that GPU. So what we'll do here is show off a couple of minutes of gameplay here. And let me show you I want to also show you guys in OBS how the performance is for recording. So we want to focus in on this taskbar at the bottom here. You can see here that it's been recording about 10 minutes now. CPU is being used 0.1% by OBS itself. Of course, recording takes that GPU engine. We're locked at 60 FPS here, 1440p streaming, and there's 0 drop frames. So if I open the stats menu here, you'll see here that we're actually doing quite well. You know, frames missing due to rendering lag was just 13 out of 50 some thousand. That's almost 0. We're so far out at about 2 gigabytes here for about 10 minutes of video. We'll do a little bit more gameplay here, and if you're looking for a longer session, I will be streaming with these settings and talking more about this experience on a live stream tomorrow night. That's Sunday. Please tune into that live on my channel to discuss more about being able to game and stream from the Zephyrus G16 for 2024, and we'll talk about what this experience has been and have these settings really held up. We'll also play in a different game. I'll show off Dragon Age the Veilguard as well. I just want to run around a little bit here, get into a firefight, and then I'll show you guys the experience with another game and before we close out this video. So again, thanks very much to the community and to the members of my channel who pointed this out. I really appreciate this kind of info. It's just impossible to know everything yourself, so it's nice to have a community here who can lead you in the right direction, and led me in the right direction. They certainly have. Ooh, okay, what does that guy have? Do you have a rifle? Alright, let's get into the action. Run and gun. Alright, who's next? Oops. Let's hide for a second. Who's here? Whoops, and she's dead. Alright, we'll hang it here. I'll pause. We'll come back with Dragon Age the Veilguard. I want you guys to see the similar experience in that game as well. Before we hop into Dragon Age the Veilguard here, I just want to say a few other words about this. So as you can see here, when I'm not playing the game, the NVIDIA GPU here is sitting pretty much at idle. It's not really doing much. So we can see here that our Intel Arc GPU is very much lit up. This is the one doing the recording of this stream and also doing the encoding on that CPU. CPU is getting about 30 to 40% utilization. I think this is very, very respectable. It allows us to properly use the CPU and the iGPU. You can see here that about 80% utilization on that Arc GPU for the stream. Now let's jump into Dragon Age the Veilguard and we'll show you what that experience looks like. Here we are now in Dragon Age's the Veilguard. So we can see here we're getting about 60 watts to that CPU. Yeah, much higher wattage to that CPU for sure. And thus it's hitting about 96 degrees. So I think it's capable of about 40 watts of power before it starts to turn into a space heater. 87 degrees on that GPU. We're really pushing right up against that limit between 65 and 70 watts. I'm not seeing it go much above that. But the frame rate's fantastic. 96 frames per second. Oh, a little bit of frame stutter there. Not quite sure why. Let's see here. Okay, nice. Playing here in the forest, so lots of visuals here. Everything looks absolutely fantastic. You can see here that about 85 watts. Okay, it varies. I mean, but it's trying to do a good job to get that dynamic boost up. Of course, I haven't turned any of that down with turbo mode. Let's hop out and have a look at our task manager. So we can see here that our Intel iGPU is used about 80% still, no change there. Our CPU now is getting much more utilization, almost packed. We can see 20 out of these 22 cores here are pinned at 80 to 90% usage. And then our GPU from NVIDIA is getting 8.8 gigs of GPU RAM being used and about 60% roughly of the 3D engine. The video encode and decode engines are idle, which is great, which means we're getting lots of GPU focus. Of course, if you wanted to tune this further, you can hop out to Armory Crate, switch it over to the manual mode. Let's show that here quickly to get a little bit more performance towards the GPU here and calm down that CPU. Of course, when you do that, it's going to affect the recording because the iGPU and the CPU are bound by the power levels that you set for the CPU. So let's just show you what effect that has quickly before we return in here and do a little bit of gameplay, a couple minutes, just to show you that this indeed is a great way to play the game. You can see here that the thermals are still very much what we saw in Star Wars Outlaws, and it's a very similar story here for performance. Let's hop over to our Armory Crate. We'll see here that this is currently set in turbo mode. If we want to, have our heart's content, we can go here. So what I've done is pulled the CPU all the way back to 28 watts. This is really going to limit that iGPU. We'll go over to the GPU settings here. I have just turned off these overclocks that ASUS has applied. I've tuned the fan curves up using the third presets here. So for the CPU, the system fan, and also for the CPU, we'll hit apply here to make this mode effective. Let's hop over back into our game, play for a few moments, and then we'll show you what's happening in Task Manager, and we'll take a look at OBS to see if there's any drop frames, how the performance is doing there in terms of capture before we close out this video. So we can see now we're heading up closer to 80, 85, sometimes 90 watts on that GPU, getting a little bit of dynamic boost to kick in perhaps. The CPU now is constrained to 30 watts. It doesn't seem to be going much over that. And for display, again, we're running at 1440p with DLSS turned on and frame generation, running with balanced upscale quality mode. And if we look here, everything is set to a mixture of ultra, medium, and high. Let's go here. The only change we'll make perhaps is change this from balance to quality. Yeah. Oh, quality. Yeah, there we go. Just takes a second. And let's see what the impact is on our frame rates there. Oh, so now we're getting some dips below 60 FPS. Frame times are still good in the teens, not too bad. We can run around here. There's a little bit of perhaps frame stutter now. That said, let's hop out now and have a look at our task manager. We can see CPU is about 75% on 20 of those 22 cores. RAM is maxed out at 83% of that 32 gigs. Our GPU now almost fully utilized, 96% usage because we have cut the power levels down. The GPU is doing great. 57% usage on that 4070. So you can see here with stats now, we're starting to get some missed frames, getting about 10% loss in terms of the frame rendering due to the fact that one, we've pushed the iGPU down and the CPU down by constraining it to 30 watts in manual mode. We're really hurting ourselves here and not actually gaining anything to benefit. Let's switch back to turbo. All right, we saw the sliders move up, and let's head back to our game here. And let's see how things look now. We'll give it a second. Okay. So I think we're faring a little bit better. Let's do a little bit of gameplay here, a couple minutes, just to show you guys. Still getting some frame stutter, probably because it's adjusting power levels. So we'll give it a minute to do that. Let's head in here, grab some goodies, and... oh, come on. F. what kind of baddie you're going to be dealing with this one. Oh, these are the guys with the cannons. Okay, bring on the fireworks. Hey. Sorry, it's very hard to play and talk at the same time. Alright. Alright, alright. Take it easy. Take that. Oh, that's much more useful than I figured. Thought it was more gimmicky. I'm gonna have to use that more often. Alright. Take that. Oh, come on. Alright. Nice finisher move there. Seeing about still 80 watts, roughly 80 watts on our CPU. So doing pretty good. Or excuse me, GPU. Still doing pretty good. Just a little bit more frame stutter than I would like to see. Possibly we can turn down some of the quality settings for the capture. But I don't care. I think 50 megabits gives you plenty of room to do stuff afterward in post and also for clips and whatnot. So here we are. Hey, you're still around. Why don't you die? I'm trying to talk over my stream here. Do you not see? Alright, so as we can see, level 15 just completed. Still holding steady at 90 degrees on the CPU, 87 on the GPU. And trust me when I say I've tested this several hours since 7 a.m. this morning. Have a final look at our task manager. 88% on the CPU, very much utilizing everything heavily. 83% on the memory, 87% on that Arc iGPU, and about 80% now on the NVIDIA GPU. So turbo mode seems to be faring much better than manually tuning this laptop. ASUS has done a great job here with tuning this laptop. There's a reason why ASUS is one of the largest manufacturers and one of the most popular. And let's view our stats. So we can see here 1141, 12, 337. So okay, I mean at this power level in turbo mode, you're not really dropping any frames. So I would say if you want to stream and record from the same laptop with the Zephyrus G16, you should be using turbo mode from ASUS. Armory crate. Okay, I think that's about enough for demonstration purposes here. Let's hop out. We'll have a final look and close out this video. Let's go to our task manager. 85 CPU, 81 memory, 80% on the iGPU, and 80% now on the GPU as well. We'll see here 1141, 12, 337. So still locked. We've got a bunch more gameplay here. 6 gigabytes now total output. We've been playing roughly for about 30 minutes now between the two different games and recording. Those frames were dropped when we shifted the power level down to about 30 watts or 28 watts on the CPU / iGPU. So don't do that. Play in turbo mode and you'll have a great time. You can record and stream from this laptop with no problem whatsoever for the native 1440p resolution at 60 FPS. I think that's all I have to say for this video. I hope you found this information useful. It was incredibly useful to me. Thanks very much for the people who comment on my videos and who take the time to share that information and to spread the knowledge. I really do appreciate it. Thanks very much for watching. Please like and subscribe and share my content across your social media channels to help this particular channel grow as well. And we'll see you in the next video.